Today we explore another sutta. It's a special sutta because, again, it happens to be one of those discourses that don't get to be talked about, addressed, explored, discussed. Yet it has everything to do with the path. The suttas are not there for us to just feel cozy about the Dhamma or think, oh, how nice. In this very mediocre society that we live in, I see that is what usually or how the Dhamma is being treated, not with the respect that it deserves. And that has everything to do with the practitioners, and especially the teachers, teaching the practitioners. Students are called students because they're still learning. They still have a lot of ground to cover. But teachers, and when I say teachers, I'm talking about monks now, monastics. They have a special duty to the Dhamma, not to water it down, to protect it. It has been given into our care. We have to cherish it. My mom used to say, take care of it as if it's the pupil of your eye. That's pretty sensitive. You have to be extremely careful, protective. So, when it comes to today's sutta, Sekha Sutta, we don't talk about this, the theme of it, meaning Sekha. Sekha means a noble disciple in training, someone who has seen the Dhamma. They have the Dhamma eye, meaning they are on the path of no return. What we call, at the very least, a stream winner or stream enterer. When I was beginning officially this path, on this path, in this life, every time I would bring up the topic of where does this lead? Nibbana, Nibbana, Nibbana. You know, how many years does it take? And I had teachers, monks usually, different traditions, would say, well, lower your standards, basically. Well, what do you mean? That doesn't happen anymore. What? Why am I even here? Well, the most we can anticipate, expect to happen is to get a higher birth in a higher heavenly realm. So you can now use this body to earn more merits. Do good. There's teachers now who just, that's their slogan. Do good. Okay, great. What's next? What comes with that? I say, what's the point then? Why are we practicing? Is it just to avoid unpleasant situations or not to choose unwholesome actions, be they thoughts, words, or physical actions? Is that it? I mean, you have that in other traditions. So what's the big deal about Buddhism, the Dhamma? Why? It needs to have a valid reason for Lord Buddha to teach for 45 years and to leave his kingdom, by the way, and to be that dedicated. I mean, you can fool yourself for a year, maybe two, 45 years, and plus, what about his countless students? You mean to say that is not possible? And that would make them very uncomfortable, because I would poke, I still do. I poke at bubbles of illusion, delusion. So this sutta is about a person who has poked the bubble. And this era of ours of mediocrity needs a lot of poking. Not being afraid to ask questions. No, this is your life. This is your life. You have to demand the very best. And the Dhamma is providing us with the very best. But how? There's a practice. And this is the sutta about, one of the suttas, to be clear, that talks about a person who's on the way to becoming a full arahantship. Which, by the way, does happen if you're alive today. You have a chance, especially if you're attending a Dhamma talk. You have a very, very high chance. And I would tell people, the Dhamma is not about, Lord Buddha's teachings are not about gambling or guesswork. No way. You don't play guessing games with the Dhamma. That's why I'm very staunchly, adamantly against rites and rituals. They have no place in the Dhamma of Lord Buddha's teachings, which unfortunately that's what happens with human beings. We take something beautiful and we ruin it over time, turning it into routines, into rites, whatever we can see happening. Okay, we repeat that, but that's just the observable part. That's easy. Light this many candles, this many incense, bow this many times, chant this many hours, do this retreat, that, all superficial on the outside. They have their own place, mind you. Little place. The practice, it's called patipada. The practice gets a person to become a Sekha, a noble disciple in training. So this sutta is about such an individual. And it comes from the middle length discourses. That's the Majjhima Nikaya in Pali. That's the MN. Yes, there it is. And it is number 53. 53. Yes. This one. Yep. Technical issues. You can hear me well, though. Okay. Middle-length discourses. This is a third of the way in of the middle-length discourses because it has a total of 152 discourses. So this is number 53. Sekha Sutta, the Noble Disciple in Training. Let us begin. I have personally heard this. Actually, it should say, I have personally witnessed this, in this case, because it's Venerable Ānanda. Whenever we hear or read the beginning of a sutta that says, evam me sutang, in Pali, means, I have personally heard this. And that's Venerable Ānanda talking during the first council. Because he was there with 499 arahants in a cave not too far from Rajgir. It's collapsed now. There's only a portion of the cave you can enter in. I banged my head against the rock as I was going in. Too tall. So he was there reciting each of these suttas. And in the beginning of the sutta, one of the arahants would ask, tell us about this sutta, the Sekha Sutta. We remember Lord Buddha, when he was alive, he mentioned a few segments from that teaching. Venerable Ānanda would get up and say, evam me sutang, I have personally heard this. In this sutta's case, however, he was there personally. Because usually what would happen, Venerable Ānanda would always go every single day during the last 25 years of Lord Buddha's life because he was his attendant. And one of the requirements, conditions that he had for Lord Buddha in order for him to accept the position of being an attendant, the Kappiya, was, Bhante, he said, no matter what happens, I would like you to repeat to me that sutta that you talked about, because I might be busy somewhere, this and that, and he often was busy. Ānanda, Venerable Ānanda. So Lord Buddha agreed that he would go over the sutta specially for him because he had a photographic memory, Venerable Ānanda. He would recall. So he was doing this for us. Us. And we're so thankful. 2,600 years, we still have it. So, and we'll see why I say he was a witness to it, more than just hearing it. At one time, the Lord was staying among the Sakyans at Nigrodha's monastery near Kapilavatthu. Kapilavatthu is the place, the kingdom where Lord Buddha's family was ruling. Kapilavatthu, or in Sanskrit would be Kapilavashtu. So it still exists, but it's just the ruins. So we just have the markings, you have the bricks and you can go there in the forest. It was during that time that a new assembly hall for the community had just been constructed for the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu. So his family. It was a big family. Which had not yet been, the assembly hall, which had not yet been used nor occupied by any recluse, Brahmin or human being. Then the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu approached the Blessed One, and after having greeted the Blessed One, they all sat down to one side. Now, as they were sitting at a respectful distance, the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu spoke by addressing the Blessed One. Bhante, we now have by the way, this is how you address a bhikkhu. Anjali. This is a traditional, respectful way. We now have a new assembly hall for the community that has just been constructed for the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu. One that has not yet been used nor occupied by any recluse, Brahmin or human being. So they wanted him, in a sense, to consecrate the place, to bless it. When I was in Malaysia, I would have a lot of people come to the temple where I was staying for about 4 months, and whenever somebody bought a new car, they were bringing the car over to the temple so that the monks would, chant to bless the car. I always thought that was funny, because that's getting us closer and closer to just the rites and rituals, because it becomes... Imagine Lord Buddha, one of the kings would come and say, King Pasenadi would say, "This is a very good chariot. My goldsmiths have worked on this for days, years. And look at the stallion, so it's attached to it, so please, Bhante, could you bless?" You would never see that happen, because there's usually a hefty donation with that. That's why we have that today, unfortunately. So we've monetized a lot of the Dhamma, unfortunately. You see it all across. It's not just the Mahayanists, by the way. It's the Theravada countries. You go and see it in Thailand, you see it in Sri Lanka, you see it in Burma, you see it everywhere. This is a shameful thing. So, by the way, I don't hold back, in case you noticed. We have to say what needs to be said to protect the teachings. Because we are lucky if we still have the Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teachings, for another 50 years. They survived 2,600 years, but in our lifetime, it might be completely wiped out the way things are going. So we must speak out if we see something that does not seem right. At least we need to raise a few questions. So they're just inviting Lord Buddha to come and bless the place. We ask that the Blessed One be the first to use it. Only then it would be appropriate for us Sakyans of Kapilavatthu to use it. That way, afterwards, and for a long time, this would be for the welfare and happiness of all Sakyans of Kapilavatthu. And because they might have arguments in the assembly hall. But simply because of the fact that Lord Buddha was there at one point, even hundreds of years later, that might cause them to reconsider their attitude, because this was a sacred place. Why? Because Lord Buddha set foot there. If you go to India, you visit some of the old places where Lord Buddha has stepped foot into. Many of them are destroyed, yes, but you can tell when you walk into even some of the cities, you feel the energy. You really feel it. So, and the Blessed One consented by remaining silent. This is one of the well-known methods that Lord Buddha or some of his senior bhikkhus would accept an invitation, whether it's for lunch dana or for going and, in this case, blessing a community center, assembly hall. And then on seeing how the Blessed One approved through his silence, the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu got up from their seats, and after circling the Blessed One respectfully, and while keeping him on their right, they departed to the newly constructed assembly hall. When we see the mention of keeping him on his right, to his right, what they're saying is they are circumambulating. They're walking around the teacher. Usually it's done 3 times. So as a sign of respect. And today we do the same thing when we go and visit a stupa or a pagoda, a sacred place where there are relics. So we don't go and just bow or light an incense. Sometimes, especially if it's truly an arahant or someone who was a sekha, you're compelled to walk around it because the energy is so strong. Even though they're dead and gone, the energy is so powerful. So after circling, so they went to the assembly hall. There, the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu prepared the space by spreading carpets throughout and arranging seating cushions, setting up a water jug and lighting an oil lamp. And then they went back to the Blessed One. The water jug is there because in those days, especially the bhikkhus, including Lord Buddha, would walk barefoot, which would mean they will have their feet dirty when they're walking in, and some of the they have carpeting, so they're not going to walk around with dirty feet. So it's tradition that the lay people would wash the feet of the bhikkhus. It's very strange if you've come from a Western background, especially, because one time I was in Italy and we were invited to a dayakas or a supporter's house for lunch, and as we were going in, they had prepared a jug with water and a towel, especially for the bhikkhus, one after the other. So there was, I think, 4 or 5 of us, and it was a humbling experience. They're doing it with so much love and care and pride even. So, because they're carrying on this tradition. And sometimes it's just symbolic. They don't have the water, but they do have a towel. So they just gently rub the foot of the bhikkhu. So they had that, and plus they had lighting an oil lamp. You probably might seen them. You see them in traditional Sri Lankan temples and other temples, I think also. It's made out of brass or copper. So it's layered, terraced, like a spoke with plates or dish-like things that come out from the center. And they pour oil. And they have a wick. So it's amazing how much light they would give out in the darkness. Because they don't know how long Lord Buddha might speak. So they're not going to take the risk of having the tent be completely, or the place be dark. So, and then they went back to the Blessed One, and after saluting him respectfully, and while sitting to one side, reported on their preparations by announcing, "May the Blessed Lord come to the assembly hall at his convenience." So whenever you can. They never say, "Bhante, please come now." You will never see that in the suttas, ever. At your convenience, because the teacher might be doing something else, or is finishing a conversation or a discussion with someone. And it's also very respectful. Then, by putting on his robes and taking his outer robe and alms bowl, the Blessed One went to the Sakya's newly constructed assembly hall accompanied by his bhikkhus. Once there, he washed his feet before entering the town hall, as he sat on a seat made ready for him by the central pillar, facing the east. The bhikkhus in turn also, having washed their feet, entered the hall as well, as they sat along the western wall, with the Blessed One being in front of them, as they faced the east. So they're surrounding Lord Buddha from back. So they're looking at Lord Buddha. They're also facing the east. Then the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu, also having washed their feet, entered the assembly hall and sat down along the eastern wall, with the Blessed One in front of them as they faced the west. It's lovely that they give us so many details like this. And not every sutta has so much details. So this is good to place us in the midst of that assembly hall. So, and I just love that, the details. The Blessed Lord spent the majority of the night rousing, encouraging, educating, and inspiring the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu on the Dhamma, delighting them through his discourse. Afterwards, the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Ānanda and said, "Ānanda, why don't you speak to your fellow Sakyans of Kapilavatthu about the qualities of the noble disciple in training? As I must now take a break from teaching because my back is hurting. I need to lie down and give it some rest." People think they made, actually, Lord Buddha into this divinity. In a fancy academic word, there's a word that's called reification, to reify or deify. What that does is it separates Lord Buddha from the rest of us, puts him on this high pedestal of untouchability, intangibility, something out there, and not here with us. Backache. He had a backache, severe backache. And by this account, reading these details, we know for sure that he was old now. He had gotten old, so he's not very young, because the pain became more intense as he was nearing the age of 80 before his death. So after teaching probably for a few hours, and he would teach for many, many hours, he has to take a rest. And then he's asking Venerable Ānanda, could you take over and, in fact, talk about the Sekha to your cousins? Because many of these individuals were related to both Lord Buddha and Ānanda, and they were cousins also themselves. Yes, of course, Bhante, the Venerable Ānanda replied to the Blessed One. Then, after having folded his outer robe into four, the Blessed One laid down on his right side in the lion's posture, with one foot overlapping the other, clearly mindful and aware, while also determining the time for him to rise up. This is something I recommend for people, for meditators especially, to do. Instead of using an alarm clock, sometimes it's fun to go ahead and tell yourself, it would be good if I wake up at, let's say, you wake up at 6. Normally, you say, I would like to wake up at 5:59 or 6:01. And just have that determination. With a smile, put your head on the pillow and see what happens. The first time, the second time, it might not, or you might get closer by half an hour, and then slowly, slowly, you can even narrow it down to the seconds. So that also works with, especially with sati. So he's teaching us that. So he didn't go into a diluted state, basically. He woke up exactly at the time that he had allotted for himself. He had told himself, I will wake up at this time. And this is not a unique quality of Lord Buddha, by the way. If you're developed in your meditation, you could do that too. And the lion's posture is a good one because it doesn't put so much pressure on the heart. And it also cleanses the liver. Science is still discovering some of these centuries later. Oh, on the right side, you're laying on your right side, so I can't do it now, like basically. You can put your hand underneath, like your thumb and the index, this opening, this L shape, you can put it right under the earlobe, okay? And it also serves as an extra pillow. You do have a pillow, by the way, because you need to have the neck elevated, slightly higher. I once had a chiropractor, and he said it has to be just a little bit beyond parallel, your neck being like parallel, like spine. It needs to be slightly elevated, otherwise you might have acid reflux. You know, the acid in your lung, in your stomach might flow out, and you just start choking, and you know. So just lifting it up by maybe 10 degrees at the most. Yes. Unfortunately, they have, like in Thailand and other places, the statues we have, Lord Buddha is sitting like this. That's not the posture. They are on the statues depicting it on the right side, but this is fully sleeping. And he's putting the robe, in those days they were much thicker, and he would fold it into four. So it would turn into a pillow. So the bhikkhus don't walk around with extra pillows. It's the robe, so this is what we have. So this becomes your protection, this mosquito net, I don't know, your umbrella, all of it. So in this case, it was a pillow for him. Then the Venerable Ānanda addressed Mahanama, the Sakyan, by saying, Mahanama had become basically the king, because Lord Buddha's father had long time ago died, and Rahula, who was going to be the next in line, he had already become a novice, and then he became a bhikkhu, so he was out of the question. And then Ānanda was out of the question, Anuruddha was out of the question, so everybody was dropping out. They were just saying, I don't want this life because it's too much. You know, collect taxes, do this, go to war, have many wives, it's too much. So they had become meditators, and they became bhikkhus, and they became arahants. So who was left? Mahanama, who was, you know, one of the, basically, the brother of, I forgot now. Basically, he said, I'll take on the role of being the king. So he also became a Sotapanna. So he himself was a Sekha. Lord Buddha would never teach, or in this case, ask someone else to teach any topic, any subject, without there being a concrete, absolutely necessary reason that would help induce, spark the quality of the mind to improve. In this case, Lord Buddha has a reason to tell Ānanda, because there's a plethora of topics. Why this? Because Mahanama, I don't know at this point if he was a Sotapanna or he was about to, but he became a Sotapanna at one point. So here is Venerable Ānanda about to give him the discourse, the discussion on the qualities that make a Sekha Sekha. Now Mahanama, a noble disciple in training, possesses the discipline of moral conduct. He is restrained in his behavior, for he is steadfast in securely guarding his sense doors. He is moderate in eating and consuming, and lives with alertness, always intent on being vigilant. In his heart, he possesses the 7 excellent qualities. Furthermore, whenever he wants to, at will and without any difficulty, he attains to the 4 jhānas, which are pure forms of mental respite, happy states of rest, which he resorts to with ease here and now. And how, Mahanama, does a noble disciple in training possess the discipline of moral conduct? So basically, he gave him the synopsis. This is what's coming up. This is what I will be instructing you on. We don't know if Mahanama had the ability to go in and out of jhanas. But because Venerable Ānanda is talking about this subject matter, we know for sure that, well, we know that he was a Sotapanna. He himself was a Sekha. That's why he could talk about what qualities a Sekha must have. So, he's going to explain. Here, Mahanama, a noble disciple in training, lives and conducts himself with high moral standards. He is virtuous, ethical, and restrained according to the discipline of the Patimokkha. Patimokkha is the code of discipline for monks. Major rules and the minor rules, mostly minor rules. And they are 227 rules, which we abide by as bhikkhus. Conducting himself with right conduct while seeing the danger in the slightest fault, adhering to the code of discipline, the Patimokkha. It is in this manner, Mahanama, that a noble disciple in training possesses the discipline of moral conduct. And here I've written it down just to show those of you online. So here we have, I don't know if you could see, these qualities, most of them minus the jhānas, because I ran out of space. But this one is called Sila Sangvara. Sila because it is about the moral structure, virtue, which is lacking in today's world. Lacking. At the cost of rites and rituals. We're just paying a lot of attention to things don't matter. This morning there's a part of the Dhamma verses, if you recall, looking at the unessential and considering it as essential. Looking at the essential and looking at it, considering it as to be as unessential. That is what is happening now in the world, in your life. So this is not only pertaining to a Buddhist per se life, a Buddhist practitioner's life only. This is about every one of our lives. Wherever you're coming from. There's too much attention being given to things that don't deserve our attention. Yesterday, for example, we were talking about yoniso manasikara. Radical attention, placing the attention on the thing that needs attention. Ask yourself how much of your life is being conducted, lived in such a manner. No one can say that for you. You are the only authority on that. And how Mahanama is a noble disciple in training, restrained in his behavior, being steadfast in securely guarding his sense stores. Here Mahanama, the noble disciple in training, on seeing an object with his eyes, is not grabbed by its features nor drawn in by its details, as he restrains himself from whatever is unwholesome. That's why we need to have guardians, like soldiers standing. Every country pretty much has soldiers standing at its borders. Well, there's no borders here in Australia, but you do have borders in a sense, like, Coast Guard and whatnot, to protect the boundary of a country. With guns and all, everything. We have to be even more diligent than a mere country trying to defend its borders, because this is your life, as I was saying. If you don't protect it, who will? Especially with the eyes. And if you recall, over 70% of your attention comes from where? From what you see with your eyes. And if there's no control over what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing rather, dangerous territory. Especially when you have psychologists and experts working day and night to grab your attention with the next billboard. You have voiceover actors that have to enunciate, pronounce words in a certain way to get you excited about purchasing this product. Why? Because they need to grab you emotionally. When was the last time you actually paid attention to not what's being said, but how it's being said when you're hearing a commercial, an advertisement? This is not my mother, not my sister, but she's talking over the radio as if she knows me or something. And she's sounding so happy. Well, guess what? They had over 100 takes, maybe more than 200 takes, to get the pronunciation, everything right, to tickle your emotions. Why? So that you can go and buy that product. Yesterday we were talking about Edward Bernays, the guy who pretty much invented, just modern day commercial. How to sell. Propaganda. He's the king of propaganda. Everything you see where everyone's trying to sell you something. So if you're in control of what you're seeing, meaning you're guarding your eyes and what it sees, you will immediately turn your gaze away from that. How many teachers are teaching you this? Well, Lord Buddha taught us this. Why aren't we listening? And you don't have to be a Buddhist to be following that. You're protecting your eyes. Your eyes are not Buddhist. They're eyes. They help to connect you with the world around you. But if the world is unwholesome, the one that's being presented to you is unwholesome, who is going to protect you from the unwholesome? You have to do that work, that job. Now that was the eye. Then, obviously, we're going to go to the... let me finish this section. Thus, he attentively watches over his sight and guards it, so that coveting or aversion towards the object seen does not invade and overwhelm his mind. So you don't go ahead and think about what you saw. Oh, that was such a beautiful thing. Oh, that was a beautiful sight. I should go or I should look at it again. Everybody's trying to influence us somehow. You look at the animal world, that's what they're doing. Look at a peacock. All that bedazzling, colors. What is that? He's trying to mate. It's the male peacock, by the way. The female one isn't that attractive at all. It's the male one that's trying to sell himself. Well, the female peacock is going to look and become mesmerized by that. And they've been trying to do that with us all the time. On hearing a sound with the ears, he is not grabbed by its features nor drawn in by its details, as he restrains himself from whatever is unwholesome. These two terms are very important. Grabbed by its features nor drawn in with it by its details. Poetry works on these two, in fact. So poetry does the opposite of what Lord Buddha wants us to do. Oh yes, oh, the texture, the colors, oh, you can sit down and write a novel on a sunset if you just have the creativity. Okay, so what? It happened. Big deal. Get over it. Okay? But we like to stay in that state. And that's how we stay in moha. Remember yesterday I was talking about delusion? So watch the sunset. Sure, enjoy the sunset, but don't carry it with you. Lord Buddha didn't say, turn away, don't look at a beautiful sunset. He never said that. He always appreciated the pleasant. But he didn't become captivated by it. He didn't lose his awareness to it. And thus he attentively watches over his hearing and guards it, so that coveting or aversion towards the object heard does not invade and overwhelm his mind. So especially when bhikkhus would go on Pindapada with the alms bowl into the villages, they still do in parts of Asia. And we have rules. In fact, we have suttas where Lord Buddha encourages us, so you're so aware of everything. That's one of the reasons why we don't engage with our eyes, with whomever is giving us food. Why? Because the person might be attractive or might be trying to seduce us, might be, I don't know, might just be there. But our brain, our mindfulness is absent. So we look and it's like, oh, You just presented to yourself a new set of data that you're going to go to your boring four-walled kuti and think about what exactly? How about the voice, the sound of women laughter, for example? We have rules. And we have suttas where Lord Buddha talks about this. A few months ago, I discussed a sutta called on joining and splitting, where Lord Buddha talks about the feminine and the masculine and how we're captivated by these. We grow up basically by trying to enhance these qualities in each of us. They don't just drop out of us. They don't just die out. They're there with us until we die. So the bhikkhu has to be exceedingly careful. Even when he's walking and he hears some women laughing over there. They're just minding their own business. But if he's not mindful, guess what? That's recorded now in his brain. He's going to go, and he's already started to think about possibilities. So it behooves upon him to be careful all the time. So this is just one example I'm offering. So that thus he attentively watches over his hearing and guards it, so that coveting or aversion towards the object heard does not invade and overwhelm his mind. Next, so we have the eyes, we have the ears. Next always comes the nose. On smelling an odor with the nose, or fragrance, he is not grabbed by its features nor drawn in by its details, as he restrains himself from whatever is unwholesome. Thus he attentively watches over his smelling and guards it, so that coveting or aversion towards the object smelled does not invade and overwhelm his mind. On tasting a flavor with the tongue, he is not grabbed by its features, nor drawn in by its details, as he restrains himself from whatever is unwholesome. That's what he's trying to do. The unwholesomeness of the mental state. That's number one in this case. Because if it's a smell or if it's a taste, it's what is the residual impact of that on the mind that's more important. In Paris, France, there's millions, if not billions of dollars spent on fragrance, perfume, cologne. Why? Because they need to make sure how to seduce the other person over there if you have this on. Pheromones. There's experts, scientists working day and night to create the next potent pheromone-loaded perfume. And that's another reason why on retreats it is absolutely a no-no to wear any such things like perfume or cologne. Because that's going to make the job of everyone else very difficult. Because so long as you have a nose that could smell, you're going to pick up. So it makes other people's job harder than it's supposed to be. Same thing with the tongue. On touching, that's the fifth one, a tangible object with the body, he is not grabbed by its features nor drawn in by its details, as he restrains himself from whatever is unwholesome. Thus he attentively watches over his touching and guards it, so that guards it with what? Yes, the four-letter word, sati. Sati is the key. If you narrow down the Dhamma to the most basic four-letter word, but very powerful practice, it's sati. That is what, because the guard might be there, but blindfolded. That's what rites and rituals give us. The person might go through the 5 precepts, or 8 precepts, or 10 precepts, or 227 precepts, on the surface, and claim that, hey, I practiced 227, I practiced the Patimokkha. Yeah, but blindfolded. Where is sati when you're doing that? Is sati there? That's when it becomes really practicing the Patimokkha. So, On cognizing, this is the sixth one. On knowing. A mind object with the mind, he is not grabbed by its features nor drawn in by its details. It could be an idea, it could be a memory. You're not sucked in, you're not pulled in by what the memory does. People who have had trauma, and most of us have had trauma, especially during the last 3 years, the memory is very fatal in its power if you are not aware of what it can do to you. Trauma patients will always be sucked into the past, the event that might have taken once. But it's so compelling that the person, their legs become made of as if concrete, like a ton of lead. They cannot move when they become engrossed in that memory and what it does to the body, which is the opposite of what I had you do this morning with Metta. It's the opposite. Metta lifts you up. Trauma and being sucked into a negative memory does the opposite, pulls you down as if you got sucked into a black hole. That's why it's so difficult for trauma patients to come out. That's why they need a lot of the Brahma Viharas. That's what I used to use as a therapist with trauma patients. That was my specialty as a therapist. But it's wonderful when you offer them the tools. It's wonderful to see them change right in front of your eyes. So, thus he attentively watches over his cognizing and guards it so that coveting or aversion towards the object cognized does not invade and overwhelm his mind. And by the way, it could be something benign or something lovely, such as you were sitting in meditation yesterday and you had this amazing experience. But for some reason, it's not happening today. And then you glorify that state. You say, oh, if only, why isn't it happening now? Guess what? You're sucked into the details. You're making it a big deal. You didn't know it was going to happen. It happened. Cherish it, celebrate it, but move on. Now it's another sit. Make room for the newness to come in. Okay. In this manner, Mahanama, that it is in this manner that a noble disciple in training is restrained in his behavior, for he is steadfast in securely guarding the doors of his senses. And that's the Indriya Sugutta Dvara that I have here written, number 2. And how Mahanama is a noble disciple in training, one who is moderate in eating and consuming. This is important because I've seen bhikkhus, monastics, sitting and they have a whole selection of food in front of them, like they're Maharaja in 17th century. There's so much. It's lovely that people made these offerings, but you don't have to go through every single dish or bowl and empty it out. I think it was King Pasenadi one time, he came after a big meal. So his pants were getting bigger and bigger. In fact, I was once in Jaipur and I went to this museum for the previous Rajas. It was right next to one of those palaces in Jaipur. And they had on display behind, glass doors, this thing that looked like a curtain. And I looked, and it's like very ornate, gold, this and that, weaved, and this, very nicely, ornately done, tailoring. And then I looked, wait a minute, there's 2 of these. And I pulled back, and I saw it's someone's pants. And there was a guide who came in, and she asked if I could be interested in her services to show me around and explain. And I said, well, yeah, could you please explain me this thing? I was like, and this is not like they cut the pants so they spread it out like widthwise. No, it has the other side too. So the person can go right through and put his legs in through those 2 column-like pants. And she's like, yeah, they used to eat a lot. So when I read that sutta where Lord Buddha is talking to King Pasenadi, who comes and he's like so fat, and it's like, oof, I have indigestion. Well, Lord Buddha says, no wonder. So he says, you don't have to finish the whole plate of food that is being presented. So walk away with 1/4 of the meal, of the plate, left untouched. So, and he does that after a few times, and he comes back and he's feeling already pretty good. And Venerable Sotapatti was very known for his moderation. He would say, walk away from the meal without stuffing yourself, with all of that. Almost hungry still. Just get the sufficient amount of nutrients into your body. And that's enough. You won't die. And fasting experts today say you will not die. If you don't eat anything for months, you're fine, especially if the person has a lot of fat. Water is something we need every day, however, and salts. So anyhow, here Mahanama, so it's about moderation. A noble disciple in training takes food with careful reflection, and not for enjoyment, intoxication, or to look beautiful. He knows that consumption of food is a necessary sustenance for the upkeep and maintenance of this body, so it could continue functioning well, thus avoiding harm or getting sick, which is needed in order to lead the holy life. Thus he considers, and this is part of our chant that we do as bhikkhus in Pali. It goes in English, it's something like this. I put an end to earlier feelings and do not arouse new feelings. May my consumption of food not hinder my calm and balanced mind, and may I live comfortably and blamelessly. Blameless in this case meaning people watching me eat will not point at me or talk about me later on, criticizing my behavior. Look how he's eating like a pig over there. I know we're not supposed to say that about bhikkhus, but that the bhikkhu has to think about. That's how we have to be extremely mindful, how we put the food in, how we treat the food. Once I was in Indonesia, and I was a kappiya to a bhikkhu, a mahatera. And, as bhikkhus, we eat once. I mean, not every bhikkhu does that, by the way. Some bhikkhus I've seen, they eat 3 times a day. That's just a cultural thing. If you go to Sri Lanka, there's that tradition, or even in Korea, they do that. Mahayana do that. But anyhow, we're sitting there, and we were invited by a dayaka, a supporter, for lunch. And they come to take the order, and it's like the bhikkhu orders I was a layman then, and they order a plate of full-on steak meal with potatoes, this and that. And I went, wow, that's considerable, And then without missing a beat, he goes and says, make that 2. I was like, how is this not possible? You cannot eat that much food. But lo and behold, it was devoured. It was eaten. And then a few months later, I see how this person, we have to talk about these. This is not, by the way, musavada. This is not breaking the 4th precept. This is not, because we are discussing things. This is part of the Sekha Sutta. We have to investigate and examine behavior. Earlier I was saying it has to be blameless. So we need to speak out. I, as a bhikkhu, am giving you permission to speak out if my behavior does not match the Dhamma. You have the right to tell me, Bhante, could you stop being like a pig, eating like a pig, if I am? Of course, saying it nicely and respectfully, hopefully. Because I was stunned a few months later when I heard that individual saying, I think I have too much of this. I need to go and get plastic surgery. And also my stomach, I have to make it smaller and get, I forgot the name of that, liposuction, something else also. Stapling the stomach. Yeah, liposuction. And I was like, well, how is that possible? Like, what, can't we just not eat that much and save the donors, the supporters, the money? Because that's just plastic surgery, essentially. If I apply my mind control my senses, right, the 6 senses, I wouldn't have to deal with that. Plus, going under the knife, are you kidding me? What if I don't come out? Then my supporters will lose their teacher. So who is at fault there? Not the Dhamma, not the supporter for sure. It is I, the person who's doing that. So Lord Buddha, when he's talking about, or in this case Venerable Ānanda, he's talking about moderation in consuming, and not just food, by the way. I see people getting so much money coming in. Well, we're going to build another wing to the temple here. Why? Why? We're going to buy new statues of Buddhas. We're going to give orders for new sculptures to come in. Why? Why? Why don't we take that money and donate it, and by building a family medicine clinic free to the public in the village? What's wrong with that? Or if there are farmers nearby that are really struggling, why can't we just buy them a few buffaloes or cows or goats or whatever they use for milking and things to get the... Why shouldn't they? Who cares about these huge, magnificent temples that you see coming up? Lord Buddha did not have a single one under his name. People would offer, of course. Ajahn Mun did not have a single temple under his name. People were offering, he didn't want to have anything to do with. Bhante Candana lived in a cave. He didn't have a temple. And his cremation, if you look at it, it looks so sad. He didn't have all that, sad in the sense that it didn't have that pump, that extravagant, 1 year that, some places you've seen people, their cremation, the preparation takes a year to prepare. It took a year, I think, for Ajahn Chah's cremation to be prepared. Why? Lord Buddha's didn't even take a few days, more than a few days. The Devas didn't allow the people to go ahead and cremate because they wanted to come and pay respect. So these are things that we need to think about. Moderation. It is in this matter, Mahanama, that a noble disciple in training is moderate in eating and consuming. Even though in Pali it's bhojana. Bhojana means rice or food, how much you're eating. But it doesn't have to be just about food. Consumption. And how Mahanama does a noble disciple in, training live with alertness, always intent on being vigilant. Here Mahanama, throughout the daytime, the noble disciple in training, whether sitting, standing, walking back and forth in a suitable place, constantly works to mindfully purify his mind of all obstructive mental states. So he's not wasting time. He's vigilant as if it is his very last step he's about to take. Last word he's about to speak. So, in that sense, he is very vigilant. And it has everything to do with that. What was that 4-letter word? Sati. Similarly, in the first watch of the night, the noble disciple in training, so during the day, when we say during the day, it's until 6 p.m. First watch of the night is anywhere from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's the first, usually that's what we mean. Whether sitting, standing, walking back and forth in suitable place, constantly works to mindfully purify his mind of all obstructive mental states. So that was the first watch. Second watch goes from 10 to 2, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. We usually use that traditionally to sleep. 10 to 2, sometimes to 3. Lord Buddha didn't even sleep sometime, many years like that, because the devas would be coming to visit him, and he did not want them to miss out, because devas don't, sometimes the vibes that people put out, human beings, it deters devas from showing up. Plus, we have a smell that drives the devas away from us. Yeah, in the suttas, it said that they will rather stay 7 miles away from a human being than show up. Because even if you shower and you have the most nicest smelling perfume, we still stink to them. That's how refined their taste, their smell is. However, when you have metta in your heart, when you have the Brahma Viharas pulsating through your vessels, blood vessels, your mind, that will grab the most sensitive deva to where you are. Because metta smells like nothing else. So they will leave the heavenly realms and come to you, to this world, because they are seeing that there is in your heart beautiful metta. And that resonates with them. They will not stop. No barriers would hold them to come and say hi. And that's when you feel like everything is going so perfectly well. Why? You might even smell some roses or special fragrance in the air, even though there's nothing like that here around you, let's say, wherever you might be. Just side note. And on the third watch of the night is when they will, that goes from 3 or 2 until 5, sometimes 6. And on waking up in the last watch of the night, the noble disciple in training, whether sitting, same thing, he's constantly mindful, purifying his mind of obstructive mental states. So remember, this is a Sekha, meaning a noble disciple in training. They are not arahants, so they are invading obstructive states. And that's how we need to work. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a muscle. Think of it like a muscle. You're perfecting your skill. You're identifying if there is unwholesome state versus you wanting there to be wholesomeness. So my mom used to give me, or my grandmother, when she was going to make, let's say, rice, she would pour some, almost like a sieve, or actually like a aluminum tray, usually they're in the oven for some reason. And then she would tell me, go through the rice to see if there's any tiny pebbles or rocks, pick them up and out, clean. So I would do that. So the mind is very similar. But sometimes I would get lazy. I was like, yeah, whatever, okay. There's none, grandma come. And she would look and it's like, no, see? This would break someone's tooth. This would break, no. There's chaff or something like that. So you have to be extremely, so it's the same thing with the mind. Same thing. So that was a devotion to wakefulness, Jagariyanu Yoga. And how Mahanama does a noble disciple in training possess the 7 excellent qualities in his heart? Here, Mahanama, the noble disciple in training, possesses unshakable confidence. For he has the faith in the awakening of the Tathagata, Lord Buddha, as he knows clearly, the Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly awakened, endowed with sublime knowledge and supremely pure conduct. The well-gone, the knower of worlds, the incomparable tamer of those to be tamed, the teacher of gods and humans, the enlightened and blessed. So this is what we call saddha, or saddho in singular. This has to be there. At the very least, the faith that you have to have in yourself, that you too could taste those same fruits. Not placing the Buddha over there, up there on that pedestal, saying, no, 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 he's the only one who can attain perfection, awakening, nibbana. Otherwise, why would he teach? Think of it. If he was supposed to be the only one who experiences that, why would he waste his time teaching? If he's the only one, no. He would consider himself a failure if he did not have students who attained the same awakening as he did. This is something we forgot to consider. It's so important. So one has to have that faith when you're sitting. When I ask you to check your attitude while you're sitting, are you judgmental? Especially towards yourself or others? How about doubtful? Are you doubtful that something as mundane as, I don't think I can sit for half an hour or 1 hour. I don't, well, he can do it, she could do it. For me, forget it. Why? Why? They have a spine, you have a spine. You have sit bones, they have sit bones. What's the, of course we can. That belief, that confidence in yourself. And this obviously has many permutations. It also has to do with the confidence and faith towards the teaching, the Dhamma, towards the teacher, whoever that teacher might be. In this case, it's capital T, teacher, Lord Buddha. 2, this is the second excellent quality. The noble disciple in training possesses wise moral shame. That word, they made it a taboo in our Western culture for some reason. We have thrown the baby with the bathwater, folks. Shame is an absolute must. We must have it so long as it's wise moral shame. This is where you go and turn the gaze inward. The magnifying glass is pointing at you, by you, to look at, to scrutinize yourself. Is what I'm about to do, think, or do physically or say to someone, do to someone. If someone were to do the same thing to me, how would it land? How would I take it? If you go immediately, oh, no, 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 that's it. You're ashamed to even be thinking about doing something like that to someone else. Why? Because you abhor the idea that it might happen to you. There you go, you just drop it. Today, ever since I left the US a few years ago, I'm seeing it becoming more and more decrepit, morally bankrupt, ethically completely depleted. And no one seems to be saying anything, especially in California. Standards of moral, ethical, just basic standards are dropping like crazy. And no one's saying, excuse me, this is inappropriate. You're showing this on TV. My children could see this. I could see this. This is appalling. What happened overnight? They're pushing the envelope. How much could we tolerate? The children don't have that wisdom yet. We do. We have to stand guard as to what we allow and what we do not allow. And there's a lot that we should not allow. There is missing of wise moral shame. And obviously, they target, if before something gets depleted out of society, something noble like wise moral shame, they first start with the social sciences, by the way. That's the trick. Social sciences, humanities, in academia, let's say philosophy, gets to be excluded from the schedule. Mandatory courses for a university student, for example. Critical thinking goes out. Suddenly there's no funding for it. History, human history, gets out. So what is there? They talk about other subjects. Anthropology is out. Comparative studies of religions and cultures is out. So what happens then is, tup, 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 tup. Those are very important lines of defense. So whatever you can get away with it, entrepreneurship, making money, become the next influencer, lacking the moral backbone meanwhile. And I see this is also has penetrated already in Dhamma circles. It's a shame that we do not have wise moral shame. Similarly, the noble disciple in training possesses wise moral fear. These go hand in hand. In fact, our Lord Buddha was asked several times, what method could we use to see if we are nearing the end of days of the sasana? Could you give us a clue? What should we look out for? And he says, hiri and ottappa. Hiri is wise moral shame. Ottappa is wise moral fear, the dread, which is, earlier I was saying, the magnifying glass on you. This would be the magnifying glass on the teacher or someone you respect. Let's use Lord Buddha's example. Or someone you really, really respect. Maybe a teacher from high school or somebody you really trust and inspired by. If they find out that I'm thinking this, if they find out or they are hearing these words that are coming out of my mouth that are piercing someone, or this action that I'm about to commit physically, if such a person that I hold in such high esteem, if they witness this, how would they look at it? Will they blame me for it? If the answer is an immediate yes, stop it. That is having wise moral fear. And especially with some teachers, they also have the ability to see through your heart. Some ajahns, Lord Buddha example, he would see the thoughts of the students or people. So no matter how well they tried to hide it, they would see. So some students I know from Ajahn Mun's students, they would be very scared if they had a single thought of like, yeah, I saw that woman and she gave me the rice and then I looked over and she smiled, I smiled back and I'm walking away. I'm thinking about, oh, I shouldn't, I'm a monk. Ah. I got the solution to this. I will not go to the Dhamma Talk tonight when Ajahn Mun is giving and make up a lie. Meanwhile, he will know. He will come back the next morning. So how's that woman over there that you saw? You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be meditating, not on her, watching your breath instead. So monks knew, because they had plenty of examples in front of their eyes, witnessing all this. So would my teacher, would someone I hold in such high regard, if they knew about me having these thoughts, would it affect my decision? That's ottappa. So Lord Buddha said, if these two qualities are gone from society, not just the sasana, the whole world is gone in shambles. It's gone. So I don't care about technology, AI, this and that. It's the big news these days. Look at the leaders of countries today. Look at where we're headed. All kinds of disgusting things. Pedophilia is becoming legal. Disgusting things. Shameful things. We should never say, well, it's okay. Let's make excuses. No. No. Would Lord Buddha allow any such behavior? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have to hold ourselves to the same standard. No excuses at all. Furthermore, the noble disciple in training has learned and studied much for his personal development to gain a better understanding of the Dhamma, constantly recalling what he has memorized by heart, applying the teachings he has learned throughout his life, whereby he understands with appreciation the Dhamma that is beautiful in its beginning beautiful at its middle and beautiful in its end, full of meaning and balanced in its expression and phrasing, while declaring and revealing to him the completeness and purity of the holy life. So this is called Bahusutta, which is the ability to learn, having learned much, studied much, memorized much. Because ultimately, you're going to be bombarded with different things during the day, during your week. You need to have something to hold on to. It's like rock climbers, mountain climbers. Sometimes they will use the rope, but they need to put this nail or peg into the surface of the rock. Nail it in. So it's a hook, the loop that they hook their rope onto. And they continue climbing. But ever so often, they might have a slippery surface and they slip. But because of that hook, they're still alive. So that's why I'm so adamant in introducing listeners to the suttas, because these are, Lord Buddha is not around. No. The suttas are. So even if it's like we read this morning from the Dhammapada, even if you can recall just 2 words or one, sati, especially if it's a verse, not to look at the unessential and treat it as essential. Am I doing that? Ask yourself during the day. Or the opposite, looking at the essential and just demeaning and saying, nah, it's unessential. Is it really? If you could just recall something like that, it's wonderful. But in this case, the Sekha is someone who remembers a lot. And thus, the noble disciple, having studied and learned, while memorizing them, continuously places his attention on them, examining them, whereby he experientially tastes their truth by penetrating them with right view. That's why we are calling them Sekha. Sekha, or noble disciple in training, is a person who has seen the Dhamma. Seeing the Dhamma is equivalent to saying they have right view. Okay, right view doesn't mean, oh, I can list the 4 Noble Truths. Or I know it's the first of the Noble Eightfold Path. Yes, I'm good to go. I can get an A plus. No, that's not right, having a right view. Also, Mahanama, the noble disciple in training lives with diligence, tirelessly working to develop himself through wholesome actions in his behavior, while keeping his energy up. For he has within him persevering effort to walk away from all unwholesome actions as he cultivates and mindfully purifies his mind of all obstructive states. There's a Niagara of influence coming at you from behind because of your habitual tendencies. We call them sankharas. They're pushing us in a certain direction. Well, I used to do this in this situation, so what makes you think that I'm going to change that? Reaction. Remember yesterday we were talking about the 2? Reaction versus response. Am I taking a moment to process, even for a few milliseconds, before I just spew out that swear or that cuss word? Or allow that negative thought to, echo in my head? Take a moment. So tirelessly putting in the effort means you are not being frugal with that effort, that energy. So if you've said to yourself, when I wake up, I don't care what time, especially early morning hours, let's say it's the 2nd watch of the night, but it's so lovely in the bed, just staying here, it's so warm, I don't want to get up. Plus, I haven't had enough sleep during the week, so this is my excuse to go ahead and sleep it off. No, hold on. I promised myself I will sit. Yeah, but I'm exhausted. Yes, but I promised myself I'm going to sit. That is having that energy, that virya. Recently I was, again, shocking some listeners by saying, Nibbana is not going to fall into your lap by accident. It will never happen that. But it happened over there with that monk, with that in the suttas. Yeah, but you don't know how much work he put. Or that nun over there, she just was blowing out the candle and she became an arahant like that. How come I can't? If you worked as much as she did, you would be. Effort. Effort. Without effort, nothing's going to happen. Even when you're hungry and there's a plate of food in front of you, you need to put some effort. Reach, grab that slice of pizza, even stuffing it in your mouth and chewing, that's effort. All of that is effort. Or taking initiative, you could look at it like that. Furthermore, the noble disciple in training is ever mindful. He remains possessed with superior level of mindfulness and full awareness, along with discernment, as he remembers whatever he has said, what has been said and done long ago. So they're not just living a passive life. This is where we call the person having mahasati. Maha means great. That means, remember I was saying yesterday, sati will sit on one shoulder and panya will sit on the other. Wherever you go, they're going to be with you. Or I think I said about when I was a kid holding on to my mother's skirt in the market so that I don't lose her in all that commotion. Sati this time will hold on to you like that, holding for dear life. But it's not going to happen overnight. You need to put the effort. You need to put the effort. It's not like, yeah, I did, last week I meditated. Yeah, last week you ate. Yeah, last week I drank some water. Yeah, but what have you been doing? Every day you've been drinking. Every day you've been sleeping. The same treatment has to be given to your practice of self-purification, starting with sati, the mind, meditation. Also, the noble disciple in training is wise, for he possesses within his heart the wisdom with which he sees the constant appearance and disappearance of phenomena, along with the penetrative insight that leads to the complete end of suffering and anguish. Therefore, Mahanama, it is in this manner that a noble disciple in training possesses the 7 excellent qualities in his heart. An example would be looking at the impermanence of things. When you say, oh, this happened to me, I can't believe this happened to me, I'm the only person this happens to. Really? Someone dying, or you losing your job, or you losing your home, or you spraining your ankle. Well, it happens to me. Why does it really? And plus, is there a tomorrow coming? Impermanence. Nothing will stay, including the pain. It will go away. But it takes wisdom for you not to react. Take a moment, respond to the situation by first taking a gander at the fact that there's this thing called impermanence. Whether good, we always say, oh, good things don't last. Not just good things. Bad things too, let's be fair. This is when you develop wisdom. So more and more and more you will be able to see this throughout your life. And how Mahanama is the noble disciple in training whenever he wants to, at will, and without any difficulty, able to attain to the 4 jhānas, which are pure forms of mental respite, happy states of rest, which he resorts to with ease, here and now. By the way, I had one of my teachers in the past, Bhante Punnaji, used to tell us how jhānas, which are deep levels of experiencing the mind, where there's an opportunity for there to be so much peace, unprecedented, that even when you come out of it, if you're doing it correctly with the right effort and right understanding, you will be able to slowly understand how things come to be. We call that yatha bhutang pajanati. But if you're doing jhanas on a superficial level, they are wonderful places of rest. So he would say, oh, it's just sleep. It's like sleep, Bhante Punnaji. You go in it, it feels amazing, depending on which one. And once you come out of it, you're out of it. So whatever issues you had, hang-ups, if you wanted that plate of food, actually 2 of them with the steak, that's greed, that's actual raga, lust, lusting after food. That will show up. If you're a jealous person, if you're a mean person, in fact, once you're out of the jhana, the meanness is out there saying hello, not just to you, by the way. You're going to be continuing to be mean to others. So there is no personality change with the jhanas, unless you use them to go deeper into experiencing panya, which is wisdom. That is how you will have a personality change happen. Not by the jhanas, going in and out, staying in and out. I once met a meditator on retreat where we were doing a Metta jhana retreat. And I was stunned because that was the first time somebody would just, and we're not supposed to even be talking. There's supposed to be noble silence. He said, oh, I go in and out of the 8th jhana. This person eventually ended up writing a few books and stuff back in America. I was surprised, like, wow. First of all, I'm happy that there's a human being who's reached the 8th jhana. But then I was like, wait a minute. Why is he telling me this? Not only that, I said, you know, I feel very comfortable around you. I feel that there's a connection here. Like, I feel like, call me crazy, we've known each other. I feel so comfortable. And he says, that's weird because I just looked through my past lives and I don't see us ever having connected. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, by the way, before, because it just came to me. And I was like, and then he goes and says, I have been able to see 800 of my past lives. Again, I was happy that there's a person who could see that many past lives, or any of the past lives. But I was like, wow, he's fast to go and explore every single one and conclude that he's never seen me with him at all in any context. I was like, whoa. But being the naive person as I was like, maybe he knows something. I guess I was wrong. So there's a lot of weird things that happen, and people just make too much of a big deal about the jhanas. They're there. Lord Buddha gave them importance. Don't get me wrong. They are necessary because they give you the experience of how deep and deeply quiet the mind could be and get. But it is one of the wings of the bird. You need the other wing. And that is wisdom, which you need to work on. You need to understand through the teachings. So there's this regular formula whenever we come across the jhanas, especially the 4, Lord Buddha, in this case Venerable Ānanda, will go through them with in order. So here Mahanama, the noble disciple in training, by secluding himself, from sensual pleasures. Remember secluding? Yesterday we were talking about seclusion as being so important. Otherwise it's detrimental to the practice, if not being one. And pulling himself inwards from all manners of evil and unwholesome states, enters upon and abides in the 1st jhana, which is accompanied by thinking and pondering. We call that vitakka vichara. If you're thinking while you're in deep meditation, even if it feels nice every once in a while, but you're able to ponder and plan, dwell on thoughts, converse with yourself basically, you can still have that in the 1st jhana. But as you go deep, we'll see, along with joy and pleasure that arise from such a seclusion, there's so much joy you don't know what to do with it. It's unprecedented. Sometimes people's bodies start to shake. Sometimes it feels like your heart is about to burst. Nothing bad will happen, but just, you're like, whoa. And there is this buzzing feeling. Every single millimeter square on your skin starts buzzing. It's like goose flesh. everywhere, including your ears. So further, through the disappearance of both thinking and pondering, this is the second jhana. So they disappear. The thinking and pondering are no more there. If they are, you're not in the second jhana. So he enters upon and abides in the second jhana, which has self-confidence. So your self-confidence is going through the roof because you want to sit more now. And unification of mind, ekaggata, unification, with no more thinking and pondering, but while experiencing still joy and pleasure that are a result of his deepening of collectedness of mind. So your mind is becoming more and more collected. We call that samadhi. Furthermore, the noble disciple enters the third jhana, about which the noble ones declare, such a one mindfully abides in happiness with an ever-present state of equanimity. So wherever you go, you're just like, whoa, your mind is so equanimous. In fact, if you're doing it correctly, you will have a taste of that even after you come out of the jhana. Mindful and fully aware, the noble disciple continues feeling pleasure and happiness, but they're becoming less and less. The joy at this point is disappeared, as we're going to the fourth one. With the disappearance of joy, he remains experiencing equanimity. Equanimity has to be the loudest, if we can call it that, experience in the mind. You're so equanimous. You're not dead, you're not indifferent. You're so equanimous that you don't feel things on your body, unless somebody comes, touches, or something bumps into you. Otherwise, you're so calm. By giving up both pleasure and pain, and by already having gone beyond both delight and distress, where he no longer experiences pleasure nor discomfort, and while remaining in the ever-present state of a purifying mindfulness with the overwhelming presence of equanimity, he attains to the fourth jhana. And this fourth jhana sometimes it's seen as a doorway for other possibilities, if the mind is directed in a certain way. You'll see why in a minute. It is in this manner, Mahanama, that the Bhikkhu goes, or the Sekha goes through these jhanas. Again, we don't know at this point if Mahanama has the ability to go into the jhanas. But the very fact that Venerable Ānanda is offering him this instruction, it's almost like inducing that quality in him, in encouraging him to have that, guiding him, that you too, Mahanama, could attain like we can. What a lovely encouragement. When Mahanama, the noble disciple in training, possesses the discipline of moral conduct, he is restrained in his behavior, for he is steadfast in securely guarding the doors of his senses. So he's now going over through the whole list of things, which I'm not going to read because, well, it's a repetition, which you're more than encouraged to read, because this also is the PDF that is available on the website, mindrelease.com. in the Pali Sutta section. But there's an image here that is so beautiful. It's a lovely image. If he possesses these 7 excellent qualities, furthermore, whenever he wants to, at will, he's going into the jhanas, then Mahanama, he is declared to be a noble disciple in training who is on his way to full awakening, arahantship, for he is supported by the solid foundation of the Dhamma, someone who is ready and assured the breakthrough of awakening, the one, pay attention here, whose eggs are unspoiled and ready to be hatched. Eggs are unspoiled and ready to be hatched. For he is soon to win the matchless safety as he secures his freedom from all bondage. An arahant. He's about to become an arahant if he has all these qualities. And now we're going to see as to what he meant by his eggs are unspoiled. Mahanama Imagine there was a chicken, a hen, that sat on its 8 or 10 or a dozen eggs she had laid, while she properly keeps tending to them by keeping them warm and properly incubated, as she sits carefully on them, protectively. Now, Mahanama, whether or not that chicken thinks to herself, "Oh, if only my chicks could pierce through their eggshells by clawing their way out with their feet or beaks, if only they could safely come out and break free," those chicks would still break free, safely coming out by piercing through their eggshells, clawing their way out with their feet and beaks. So the hen or the chicken doesn't have to worry. If she's doing those, protecting like a mother, she already hatched. She already has laid the eggs. They just need hatching. You give it the heat, you give it the incubation, the necessary conditions. What an image. In the same manner, Mahanama, the noble disciple in training possesses the discipline of moral conduct. He's restrained in his behavior, steadfast in securely guarding the doors of his senses, moderate in eating and consuming, lives with alertness, always intent on being vigilant. In his heart, he possesses the 7 excellent qualities. Then, Mahanama, he is declared to be a noble disciple in training, who is on his way to full awakening, for he is supported by the solid foundation of the Dhamma, someone who is ready and assured the breakthrough of awakening, the one whose eggs are unspoiled and ready to be hatched, for he is soon to win the matchless safety as he secures his freedom from all bondage. Such a noble disciple in training, Mahanama, having arrived to this state of supreme purity through equanimity and thanks to his mindfulness, recollects his many past lives in all their details and features. That is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3 births, 4 births, 5 births, 10 births, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many eons of world contractions, Big Bang, many eons of world expansions, many eons of world contractions and expansions, recalling thus, "There I was so named, of such a family, with such an appearance. Such was my food and sustenance. Such were my experiences of pleasure and pain. Such was my lifespan. And after passing away from there, I was reborn elsewhere. And there too I was so named, of such a family, with such an appearance. Such was my food and sustenance. Such were my experiences of pleasure and pain. And such was my lifespan. And passing away from there, I was reborn here." Now this is the first breakthrough, much like the first chick breaking out of its eggshell. Now, remember the example I gave earlier of that fellow yogi who was telling me about him 800 lives? I wouldn't want you to belittle that. Not that incident, because that was very pompous and that would be very inappropriate to come out and say that to someone that you're just meeting. So there's a lot of ego there. But we should not throw the baby with the bathwater, because this, whatever we just read here, the ability to see the past lives is very real. If you practice your meditation and you're practicing the 4th jhana especially, and you, under the protection and guidance of a teacher, you can go ahead and see however many lifetimes you want to see. But you have to have the 4th jhana because you need equanimity. Because you will see things, you will most certainly see things that could jolt you and shock you, things that you have done. So equanimity is number 1 to balance the mind, to protect the mind. No matter what happens, you're unshakable. So please don't equate those two. The one example which I shared with this. And then Mahanama, such a noble disciple in training, having arrived at this state of supreme purity through equanimity, and thanks to his mindfulness, can employ the psychic power of knowing the destinations of beings as they die and reappear in the different realms of existence. Thus, with the divine eye, we call that Dibba Chakku, the divine eye, to be able to see where beings are being born and where they're coming from and where they're going. You'll be able to see that, which is far superior and pure compared to those of human beings and other animals. He sees clearly all types of beings dying at the end of life, whether being reborn into exalted or miserable states, beautiful or ugly, fortunate or unfortunate, as he sees and understands how beings pass on to different states according to their actions. Thus, many of the rich people you know, celebrities, many of the world leaders that you see, you hear on the news, unfortunately, they're not going to end up in good places. That's not Dibba Chakku necessarily, divine eye, it's just logic. Because of their behavior, their akusala kamma, unwholesome behavior. But imagine if you have this ability, you will be able to see exactly where they're going to end up. Without a shadow of a doubt. You will know for sure, as if you saw them landing. There's a term in Pali, well, in many suttas, where you see Lord Buddha's talking about a person who has been breaking precepts. Or just harming other beings, or doing things without wise moral shame and wise moral fear. He says they will land in hell realms as if deposited there. As if somebody just grabbed you, you close your eyes, open your eyes, you're there. Immediately. So there's no like transition where you go to a chalet or a villa waiting for your time. There's no such thing. It's immediate. And similarly for somebody who is going to be reborn, reappear in the heavenly realms. They exist. They do exist. Your practice will validate this for you. A few weeks ago I was somewhere and someone asked me whether I really am serious about this. Because they had watched some of my talks in the past on where I discussed this. And I said, listen, I come from a science background. I need to touch, feel, empirically examine, observe, and I don't believe blindly anything. And I said, when I used to read the suttas and I would get to that point where Lord Buddha is talking about hell realms, heavenly realms, this and that, I would always take it with a grain of salt and just step aside and say, I don't know. I just, I respect Lord Buddha, I have faith in what he's saying, but that was not something that I felt viscerally to be true, personally to be true. But the meditation allows us to validate these for ourselves. And when it is validated, oh boy, you cannot express that enough, how horrible it is. They have the hell realms, or the animal realm even for that matter, or the hungry ghost realm, miserable realm, which by the way, ghosts cannot do anything to you, just to let you know. They're in terrible misery. They need our compassion. They need you to share some of the merits when you do something. Today, you all offered food. Every time you're putting a spoonful of food into the bowl, always think about others who don't have that ability. Share it with them, because they would really appreciate it. Many of them have been forgotten for eons. They don't have any loved ones, no family. And they're in misery. And these are still better off than the hell realm dwellers. They are hopeless. But the good news is, these are all temporary realms. Remember anicca, impermanence? Even the hell realms are impermanent. The time will come where it will stop. They will be, the immensity of their bad actions will be reduced. And then they will have the opportunity to get for lack of a better word, upgraded, to an animal. Or sometimes they might even be reborn immediately into a human realm. What kind of a human life? I don't know. You see them sometimes. A person who doesn't have legs crawling through the streets of Colombo or somewhere in India, miserable, tortured. They're still a human, but what kind of life? These are real. These really are real, these realms. But that's all I can say. Your practice will validate it for you. So the person with the divine eye will be able to see these good beings who behaved badly through their bodily actions, their speech, and their mental actions, being disrespectful towards the noble ones, while grasping on to their wrong views, and on account of their wrong views in action, with the breakup of the body after death, are now reborn in a state of misery, utter deprivation, in a bad destination, in evil states, and even in the hells. But these worthy beings who behaved virtuously through their bodily actions, their speech, and their mental actions, being respectful towards the noble ones, being right in their views, and on account of their right views in action, with the breakup of the body after death, are now reborn in a state of happiness, in a good destination, even in the heavenly world. That too is temporary. Yes, the shortest lifespan is the one above the human realm, which is about 9 million human years. But even that runs out. So it's not eternal life. There's no such thing in the Dhamma. But it runs out. Some of them are actually in the billions and billions and billions of years, but they have an expiration date. Once the merits run out of the good deeds, you will fall. Dum, 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 dum. That's why Lord Buddha always insisted, break the bonds to the 31 realms. Cut your connection to samsara. The only way to do that is to develop your wisdom, to see through with insight, understanding. And thus with the divine eye, which is far superior those of human beings and other animals, he sees clearly. Then this is the second breakthrough, much like another one of those chicks breaking out of its eggshell. Now that Mahanama, the noble disciple in training, having arrived to this supremely pure state of equanimity, and through the power of his mindfulness and by the destruction of all his mental contaminants, he here and now and in this very body finally attains the spotless freedom of the heart. Akuppacetu vimutti in Pali, along with the freedom through wisdom. Having directly known and intuitively understood and realized it through his own efforts. This becomes his natural state of being as he dwells in it. This is the third breakthrough, much like another one of those chicks breaking out of its eggshell. So, and then he goes through the whole, I'm not going to repeat, so the whole list, reiterating. And this repetition is not necessarily only for Mahanama, but it is especially important for the reciting bhikkhus over the centuries, because there was no writing. So it had to do all repetition. So if you have a segment in a verse or a sutta, a discourse that's repeating, it verifies that what he had just remembered or memorized, if it's accurate in the second repetition or the third one, that's how he could refine it and also remember it better. And also, especially, the listeners, whatever they slipped, it was slipped by them, they forgot to pay attention, sati wasn't there, by the second round they would hear it again. I was, oh, okay. That's why these suttas should not be read or listened to once. I highly recommend, that's why I have them, here, and I'm glad you guys are also recording. This is wonderful for people to have access to the suttas. And when the bhikkhu or the noble disciple recollects such a noble disciple recollects his many past lives and all their details and features, this is declared as being the outcome of his true knowledge and direct experiencing. He's not saying it by going off of what he heard the teacher say. because that would be just parroting. And a lot of people do that today. You have monks today say, as such an Ajahn used to say, as this teacher used to, as my teacher used to. Fine, get over it. How about you turning that into your experience? Why don't we talk from our own experience? And if you don't have the experience, fine, there's no shame in that. Go ahead and have some experiences. Put the energy. Seclude yourself. Work on yourself. Discover the truth of these statements for yourself. That has been the challenge. Challenge number one by Lord Buddha to all of us. But it's copping out. It's cowardly to go and say, well, my teacher did this, my teacher saw that, my teacher used to tell us. Well, that was the teacher, okay? Let's talk about you. Similarly, when the noble disciple in training employs the psychic power of knowing the destinations of beings as they die and reappear in the different realms of existence, seeing and understanding clearly how beings pass on to different states according to their actions, this is declared as being the outcome of his true knowledge and direct experiencing. Similarly, when the noble disciple in training, here and now and in this very body, finally attains the spotless freedom of the heart, along with the freedom through wisdom, as a result of the destruction of all his mental contaminants, we call them the asavas. Having directly known and intuitively understood and realized it through his own efforts, whereby it becomes his natural state of being, so he's not making anything up, as he dwells in it, this too is declared as being the outcome of his true knowledge and direct experiencing. For this reason, Mahanama, this noble disciple in training is declared to be perfectly established in true knowledge, perfectly established in good conduct, and perfectly established in both true knowledge and good conduct. Also, Mahanama, this verse was uttered by Brahma Sanankumara himself. Although a noble warrior king is considered as the best among those people who value royal lineages, but the truly best among both gods and humans is the one who is perfectly established in both true knowledge and good conduct. Now, Mahanama, this verse was appropriately and justly sung, not wrongly or inappropriately, by Brahma Sanankumara. This was a Brahma, and it's he's from the pure abodes, and that's a abode, there's several of them, 5, and they are only for anagamis. These are not regular Brahma gods. And he had declared that, so he's saying this was an utterance that came appropriately and it was justly expressed. It was appropriately and justly uttered, not wrongly or inappropriately, for it is meaningful in its significance, as it is directly connected with the goal, having nothing to do with what is not the goal. As such, it has been approved by the Blessed One, by the Blessed Lord himself. Then the Blessed Lord, having risen from his rest, so now Lord Buddha had woken up, got up, addressed the Venerable Ānanda by saying, it is good, Ānanda. It is good that you, Ānanda, spoke to the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu on the qualities of the noble disciple in training. These were the words spoken by the Venerable Ānanda, which the great teacher approved. And the Sakyans of Kapilavatthu were inspired and happy in having listened to the Venerable Ānanda's words. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Whether a person is a Sekha or not, we could not, nor are we able to decide that. It is the person's behavior which dictates it. Person's behavior. So, it's a lovely sutta. It's a long one, but I've had longer ones. But any thoughts, questions, comments you might have?
I'm just going to turn to those online. If anyone online has any questions as well. Any from your end?
Yeah, there's one from Upatissa. Thanks very much for the Sutta, Bhante. This serves to remind that the Aryan practice undertaken by Sekha invariably converges to the four Gatha instruction given to Bahya Daruchirya. In seeing, there is only seeing. In hearing, there is only hearing. In feeling, there is only feeling. In cognizing, there is only cognizing. Then you are neither here nor there, nor anywhere in between. Etang mantang dukkhassa. Thus is the end of suffering. Thank you, Upatissa. Beautiful, beautiful. And Venerable Bahya Daruchirya was the fastest in attaining, with the shortest of instructions. In fact, Lord Buddha wasn't even sitting down when he instructed him. And Venerable Bahya, I know I mentioned this, is one of the most inspiring individuals from the suttas for me. And he had run over 700 miles in less than 3 days from the area where we call north of Mumbai today in India, to all the way to the opposite side, almost the opposite side of India, where we have Sotapatti. Because he had thought that he was an arahant, a perfected one. And he was behaving like he's an arahant, receiving donations and sponsors and all that. Until one night, his friend from a past life appears in the form of a deva and just shocks him with the reality and says, by the way, you're neither an arahant nor are you close. You're not even on the path of being arahant. And he's shocked. And look at his humility. He says, then is there a person on the planet who is? Is there a teacher who could help me? He says, oh, you're so fortunate because there is even a Buddha now. He says, really? Yes. But he's on the other side of India. Jambudvipa it's called, India, in the suttas. And he's staying at Savatthi. And that's all he needed to hear. He gets up running in the middle of the night. He doesn't wait. He was only stopping those times where he needed to rest the body, go to the bathroom, eat something, and run again. That is called having effort, diligence. Are we doing that? And by the way, he gets to Savatthi, he runs straight to the monastery. He's heaving and like panting. He's like, where is the Tathagata? Where is the Buddha? And he's, by the way, he's wearing, it's called Daruchirya because he didn't have a robe because he had just survived some time earlier. He was shipwrecked, basically. He found himself on the beach. His ship had, run aground or something had happened, winds and all that. So he was the only survivor from the whole ship. So he didn't have any clothes. So he finds these pieces of wood and banana leaves and things, dry, driftwood. And so he ties that around his waist so he doesn't, he can cover his privates. And people come the next morning, see him, and they think he's a sadhu. He's a great spiritual being. And so they give him food and things. He's like, this is not a bad deal. And he just continues staying. They even give him clothes. But he says, if these people see me wearing the clothes, they're going to stop giving me clothes and food. So he says, no, I'm going to stay like that. So this goes on for some time, and then he sees the dream. So anyhow, he gets to Savatthi, and he says, where's the Buddha? Where's the Buddha? They say, he's gone now to the village to get his food. He's on alms round. He says, where? He says, he's in Savatthi. He runs there. He gets to the village and he sees finally Lord Buddha going quietly from one door to the next, one house to the next. And he goes and falls in front of his feet and he says, Bhante, please give me instruction. Please give me instruction. Lord Buddha says, Bahya, now is not the time. Bhante says, please give me instruction, please. Bahya, now is not the time. And then finally Daruchiriya Bahya says, Bhante, I don't know how long time I have on this planet. And I also don't know how long the Tathagata has on this planet. And that would be his third time asking. And number 3 is extremely poignant when it comes to the suttas. Lord Buddha has to give him something by the third time because he's resilient, he's going after. And Lord Buddha was in fact doing what a very masterful, excellent teacher would. When he sees the mind of the student agitated, he's buying time. He's allowing the mind to settle until Bahya's mind is so perfectly ready for what the teaching is going to be. And he says, Bahya, when you see something, just see. When you're hearing something, just hear, just listen. Meaning don't add your story to it. When you experience something, just experience it. Don't add your narrative to it. Meaning at the point of contact, let the contact be seen for what it is and drop it. Don't make a story out of it. And guess what? Bahya becomes an arahant. With that much. And he says, Bhante, please ordain me. Please make me a bhikkhu. And he says, Lord Buddha says, where are your robes? Do you have your robes and your bowl with you? He says, no, Bhante. And he says, hold on. And he rushes into the village begging for a bowl and the robes. But he already completed the task. And Lord Buddha knew that that would be the last time he would see Bahya. Because there was a cow, a mother cow. You know, if you go to India, these cows, you know, they have these horns, some of them pretty sharp. And it gores him, kills him. But he had done his work, so he didn't care. So he dies, and on the way back, Lord Buddha is walking towards the monastery, and the other bhikkhus, they say, Bhante, Bahya, a cow just killed him. He says, take your friend's body, friend in the holy life, even though he was not a bhikkhu, but Lord Buddha calls him that, and cremate him, and build a nice stupa over. They say, oh, Bhante, where is his next destination? They thought that he was just a regular person still, and he said, your friend and your brother in the holy life, that was it. Extinguished. He became an arahant. And he is listed as one of the 80 excellent individuals in the list in the Anguttara Nikaya, numerical discourses, where Lord Buddha places each of the best in this, the best in that, the fastest is Bahya. He has that category. So, thank you, Patissa, for that. Any? Oh yes, there's a question.
A follow-up question on that. Which sutta is that in the Anguttara Nikaya?
Oh, it's in the first book of the Ones. I have it narrated. It's in the. It's in the book of the Ones where Lord Buddha lists the who's who of bhikkhus, individuals, and then for the bhikkhus, and then there's also for the bhikkhunis, and then there's another sutta. They follow each other sequentially, but they're in the book of the Ones. But I don't remember which one it was. And then there is for the lay male disciples, where you would find, let's say, Anathapindika, being there on Chitta, the householder, being the top lay person who is excellent at giving Dhamma talks. Then he's also listed there in the lay male disciples. And then you have the female lay disciples category. The best. But the sutta that I was referring to discuss or to share with you Bahya's life, that is from the Bahya Sutta in the Udana, which is another book in the Kuddaka Nikaya. So that's also, I read that. That was actually the first book I narrated. It's online, so you could listen to it. Any questions from...
Yes, we have some questions here.
Oh, nice.
So Bhante, what is the difference between liberation of heart and liberation by wisdom mentioned in the sutta?
Tough one.
Excellent question.
It is a good question. Very, very good question. This goes in the face of those commentators who always insisted on dry vipassana, saying that it's just through vipassana that you will attain. That, in this case, it's an individual, an arahant. This is one way of distinguishing. There's also another distinction where you have an arahant being identified as liberated in both ways. That means through the jhānas and through wisdom. So that's another designation. Basically, they're saying the same thing, the way I understand it, of course. Some might not agree with me, might be. But with the jhanas, as you go through the 8 jhanas, what I didn't mention is there's a 9th jhana. This is where you're going into the supramundane level, where there is the cessation, the ending of both feeling and perception. Sanya Vedaita Nirodha Samapatti, it's called in Pali. This is an affair of the heart. One of my teachers used to look at citta or ceto as having to do with emotions. We have to overcome them. He was very much influenced by Western psychology, unfortunately. But Lord Buddha when he was talking about the mind, he distinguished mano and citta or ceto. In this case, it's akuppa ceto vimutti, ceto, unshakable. The heart is unshakable. That's why the insistence on the intuitive sense. A lot of the work that we do as meditators has to do with intuition. Instead of looking at it analytically, or, okay, now I'm at this jhana, next I'm going to go to the next jhana. So what can I do? What are the tricks? What can I do? What can I do? That is very much trying to use your head, not your heart. This has a lot to do with the heart, the work that we do. Remember, yesterday I was saying the kileshas, the defilements, are in the heart, as is the Dhamma. Unfortunately, the defilements come and suffocate the Dhamma in your heart. How do you not have that happen? By living a morally conscious, wise life. Choosing the wholesome from the unwholesome. The way you treat yourself. When I almost exclusively now teach Metta. Why? Because our time period now in this planet is in desperate need of Metta. Not just to give but to someone else, to the world, but to ourselves, because we have this very staunchly, adamantly, aggressively arrogant attitude towards ourselves. Especially how we relate with ourselves, how we treat ourselves. Oftentimes I have to send students to go see a therapist for some time, because they are resorting to meditation as their way of chickening out or getting a shortcut, using the Dhamma as therapy. That is wrong. So the person has to do their work in creating that balance. And Lord Buddha didn't use these many words. He was excellent in using the little amount of words and saying so much. So liberation or freedom through the heart or of the heart. That's how I see it. When there is this balance now. Where the mind is so calm that the person can drop into the cessation of feeling and perception. And as they come out of it, by the way, they're not conscious while in it. As they come out, they have to have already predetermined, just like Lord Buddha did when he went to sleep, to rest. He determined that I will wake up at this and this time. When Ānanda finishes giving the talk, I will wake up. For example, I don't know. Similarly, the person decides on coming out of the cessation of feeling and perception, maybe after 20 minutes or 7 days. That's the maximum. Even though nowadays there are people who say they can stay longer, which tells you something, that they're not doing it right. They're talking about something else. But as they come out, the mind is so primed, it seeks to be in the signless. It can no longer attach itself to any ideas. It's so clear, it's so calm, the heart is so open. Nothing shakes it. Nothing shakes it. The mind is completely blank. You have to invite a thought. That's how liberated you are. You have to, okay, let's have a thought. Come. I'm saying it in a very nonchalant way, but basically, it's like, a gold coin tossed into the mud, and you remove it, and it has no spots on it. It's stainless, untouched by the mud. I'm giving you examples, similes or... So that is there. But there's also wisdom, like in the case of Venerable Sariputta. And that is the liberation through wisdom. Meaning, if you ask, let's say, Venerable Sariputta, he would be able to unravel for you, in his exquisitely masterful way, how the three characteristics of existence, breaking down anicca, breaking down the connection of dukkha to anicca, and the anatta part, completing the whole circle. And they're liberated through understanding. That has to be there. So in the case of Venerable Bāhiya, the way I understand it, he attained arahantship through wisdom. He didn't have time to go through the first. Some people might say he did. I don't know. But I don't have a record of him having, any of the suttas, of him having gone through the jhānas, the liberation of the heart. So there needs to be that quiet. Now, that doesn't mean that liberation through wisdom means the person is sitting in the bookstore or library going through the suttas and they're okay. Yeah, that's not liberation through wisdom. That's analysis. Analysis has nothing to do with the path. With the attainment. Am I close enough to addressing the question? I don't know whoever asked the question, but it's a very difficult to explain because, and whoever tries to explain it, they're just going to use a lot of left brain to describe something that is far beyond the left brain's limits. But we could try.
Thank you so much. That's such a thorough answer to your great question. Next question is this. Is the practice of the Sekha Sutta meant for someone who is a stream enterer or aspiring to become one?
All of the above.
Okay.
Hopefully we don't look and say, it's so great to be a Sekha, I guess. Too bad I'm not one. That is something that Lord Buddha would completely discourage. He would look at the students and say, the very least in attainment among you that I want to see is a stream winner, the first level of awakening. Because that would be so much, that would say so much. Because the person has now passed beyond the point of no return. Your faith in your freedom, in your attainment, in your clarity is so unprecedented. It's completely, you were not a stream winner a moment ago, now you are. Completely different. You want to, let's say, sometimes you just want to play that game with yourself. It's like, yeah, let me go ahead and have that unwholesome drive, or let me lose the faith in the triple gem, just for game or whatever. And it's not there. It's not there. It's like an eagle trying to be a chicken. It doesn't work. Or like a tiger trying to change the pattern of its stripes. You pass the point of no return. And now, why do I use these words? Or I'm inspired by the suttas, of course, because you see every single one of the suttas is gearing us to move us in the direction of having us become a Sekha. That's what it is. Not to go ahead and idealize or idolize. Oh, detached from us. Oh, yeah, it happens to those people over there. It happens to people over there, not to me. That mentality is very dangerous. There's that separation, which means essentially the person does not have saddha. Where is it? Here. The faith. The person doesn't have faith. And on a mundane level, even as a therapist, when I used to work with patients, the person would come religiously every Thursday or whatever. They apparently trust in me to be helping them, but they don't have trust in themselves. So they feel amazing for a day or two until it wears out, wears away, the effect of it. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? 6 days and 23 hours, you are with yourself. What are you doing? For 1 hour, almost 1 hour, you're spending it with me per week. So whose company is more important? Mine or yours? For you. So you need to have the faith in yourself that, yeah, of course I can. Also, what are the maps? Can you show me the map? This is the map. This is one of the maps. The Noble Eightfold Path is a perfect, simple map. You don't have to know Pali. You don't have to know the suttas. Just remember the Noble Eightfold Path. Can you do that? Or even Venerable Bahi has the instruction that was given to him. When seeing, just see. Could you do that? Without attaching, oh, I hate her. Oh, she did that to me. Yeah, but what was it essentially? What happened? How do you know it was her? Well, my eyes, which is an organ, saw a visual form. Period. Something visible was spotted, and there was eye consciousness. Triggering of eye contact. Stop it right there. Could you stop it right there? Without writing a novel on what you saw, having a relationship with what you saw. This is not easy. But as you're looking at it, even in those terms, amazing things start to happen. You become less reactionary. You start seeing a pattern. Oh, I see. What people have done with the Dhamma is they've overcomplicated it. Earlier I was saying they deified or reified Lord Buddha and put him over there as a god or something, separate from me and my life situations. That's one way of distancing yourself from the possibility of freedom for yourself. And another one is when you overcomplicate the teaching he passed on to us. It's simple. Not easy, but simple. My dad used to say, son, don't carry the ladder sideways when you go through the doorway. Turn it, and you use it to go vertically, not sideways. But that's what we have a tendency of doing. And the suttas are marvelous in their simplicity. The mind goes, yeah, but it's supposed to be more complicated. Why? Why? Well, I'm not supposed to get into a jhana. Why? Years ago, I had some people say, well, in order for you to experience the jhana, you have to go into the mountains for 40 years, live in a kuti. I'm not exaggerating. To go into that state. Where do you see that in the suttas? Nowhere. But people, because they're stubborn and their stupidity, they make that into the norm. So it is for both. The one aspiring, because even a Sekha is not completed the task yet. They become completed in their task when they become asekha, meaning a person who's now no more a noble disciple. They're graduated. We call them asekha. Okay? Arahant is an asekha. Done what had to be done. Now they're just waiting for, they're doing time, basically. Waiting for the exit. So.
Okay. Any other question for that?
Not yet, no.
Bhante, is it important to sit for long hours?
Could they define what they mean by long hours?
So say 4 hours plus.
If you are approaching it not with greed, because I know some teachers I've had in the past, they still push for, or were pushing for, longer sit. You're never going to beat a rock in how long you could sit. It's impossible. I think one of the oldest rocks they ever found on this planet was 3.2 billion years old, from Canada, Saskatchewan, I think. You're not going to be beating that record. So no, I'm jokingly approaching that question because I've had people who would, or groups of yogis, who would sit down and just like that, 800 lives and that jazz, so-and-so sat for 12 hours. Ooh, he must be an anagami by now. That's the conversation. Totally adhamma, by the way. And I was driven into that too for some time. Oh yeah, 2 hours? I'm going to beat you and we're going to go 3 hours. We won't say that, but we do it. Now that's different. So that's a lot of ego there. Arrogance. A lot of mana. Conceit. So that is completely adhamma, the approach. Now, having said that, if the person is going deep, not to pursue any ulterior motives, but they're just called to sit. It's like, whoa, this equanimity is like, whoa, this is nice. Okay, let's sit. And then they open their eyes, it's been 6 hours. Or even 10 hours. That's wonderful. There was no compulsion. There's no trying to prove something to someone or to go and report to the teacher the next day. Yeah, I said 10 hours. Wow! Because that's what happens. We would line up to just go and give reports, even when you have nothing to report. The teacher would go, so anything exciting happen? Look at the level of expectation. Now you have to conjure up something that's not there. I would look at other yogis and it was like, they're in a state of equanimity where there's nothing happening. But the teacher wants to hear something juicy. Now I want to see something. And now that doesn't stop there because the other people over there, they're listening to what is happening. They're keeping tabs and they're recording. And the teacher is totally oblivious, apparently, or eager to hear some good stuff. The other person comes, anything happen, and they repeat what they heard. By the way, I am sharing with you my personal eyewitness account. I've been there, done that, and witnessed this happen. The interview would be happening in a room, and the door would be open often, and there would be a line of chairs outside. So you would, they would call you, or your name would be there. So next, the other one goes. They're like, oh yeah, it's like coming out of an exam room. You feel so good. And now the other person's like, oh, they're going. It's like, look at them. And they also overheard what the teacher was saying. Guess what they will say now? Because the questions are one size fits all. Sadly. Lord Buddha never taught like that. Never. ever taught like that. And that was one of the problems I was having. Because I was seeing Dhamma pretending to be Dhamma. Because I had access to the suttas. Not just me, everyone has. But I had studied over 30 years. 30! And I was like, but okay. What can I say? Who am I? I'm a human being who is suffering in samsara. I want to put an end to it. Lord Buddha gave the directions 2,600 years ago. I don't have to reinvent the wheel, fortunately. What did Lord Buddha say about this? If it does agree with what is being taught, wonderful. If it doesn't, move on. Lord Buddha is our teacher, number one. Because he's always pointing back to you. Because I was seeing it became like a conveyor belt of noble disciples. Every retreat there would be like 32 anagamins or sotapannas, 16, maybe 17, we're waiting, of sakadagamins, and 8 anagamins. And there's a possibility, let's wait for the weekend, I think we might have 2 arahants. Disgusting. Dhamma. Dhamma. And whenever I would bring it up, it was just like, shh. But that's one of the best ways to become famous in the world today. One of them. One of the best ways. But if I die in 5 minutes, 5 seconds, how did I live? What did I do with the Dhamma that was offered to me? This body that I had to work so hard to get to be born as a human in this life, go through hell. And now we are fortunate to have the Dhamma. How are we using the Dhamma? One-upmanship? Who cares if I'm a Sotapanna or not? If you are an Anagami or not? Who cares, ultimately? How is that changing the quality of my life? The behavior tells it all. Today, everybody who follows a famous teacher, guess what they say about the teacher? He's an arahant. Amazingly, then nobody's below an arahant level for some reason. At the very least, an arahant. It's sad. In the Sekha Sutta, examining Sutta number 47 from the Majjhima Nikaya, Lord Buddha says, go and spend some time with the teacher. Some time. Getting to know them closely, not putting them on that pedestal over there where you see them sporadically every once in a while. No! Go serve them, bring them food, this, that. Especially watch how they are relating with other people. How are they treating other beings? How are they treating themselves? And are they living according to the Dhamma? Who cares about titles? Because if you are a noble disciple, you really don't care if other people know that you are a noble. In fact, you really will stay away from declaring it. It's too much attention. Now people are going out of their way to announce to the world that I am an Aragami, I am an Arahant. I've done some brain scans to prove it. Well, if you have done brain scans, maybe you really needed the brain scans. I have to get on a radio show to tell people I'm an Anagami or I'm an Arahant. Why? Did Venerable Sariputta ever do brain scans? Did he go? I've never seen anywhere in the suttas, thousands of suttas I've come across, never seen once where any of the noble disciples or arahants even go and say, hey, I'm an arahant. In the Kosambi, right after the Kosambi incident, when Lord Buddha goes, there's the Upakilesa Sutta and the other one, where Lord Buddha goes and visits 3 of his students, Venerable Kimbila, Nandiya, and Anuruddha, in the park, in the forest. It was a secluded park. It was protected. So they were living there. Beautiful community of 3 monks. Each of them would look at the other bhikkhu as if they are the most important person. So if one person wanted to do this, they would think, well, what would my brother over there want? Would they not want me to move this? They would leave it. So they would put their needs after the needs of the other person. And the other person, vice versa. So imagine the beauty of that triangle. So they developed so deeply, and eventually they followed the directions of Lord Buddha, especially in relation to the upakilesa, the corruptions of the heart, the mind. And after Lord Buddha gives them the instruction, he comes back 3 months later, after the Vassa, he visits them, and he asks them, so how is your practice going? How is your relationship with one another? They say, Bhante, we blend like milk and water. So much respect, so much love. There isn't like one-upmanship at all. Anyhow, there's a series of questions. So now, Venerable Ānanda, he had the divine eye, by the way. He could see far distant galaxies, as well as the hearts and minds of others. And he goes, I laugh because it's so beautiful. It's so cute. It's so nice. It's so beautiful. He says at the end of the sutta, he says, Bhante, all of us have attained to this level, and we attain it with this much ease, and we attain to this level, this, and we have all, by the way, have ended the defilements, Bhante, destroyed all the kleshas, and this is wonderful. Lord Buddha leaves. Now, as it's customary, they will walk to the gate of the park with their teacher. So they walk, Lord Buddha to the gate, and Lord Buddha goes. And now the other two, Venerable Nandiya and Kimbila, turn to Venerable Ānanda and they say, Avuso, friend, we don't ever recall ever telling you that we attained. How did you know? We never told you, right? We never told. Yeah, we never told him. How do you know? He says, I just looked into your hearts. I saw that you have also attained the same level of attainment as I. And when the teacher was here, I felt it necessary to, because he already would know anyhow. Lord Buddha would clearly know. Anyhow, he says, even if I wasn't able to see to your mind, through your heart, the devas had already been telling me for a while now. So, no talking about this. You don't need to. Why? Especially if a teacher, because this is another phenomenon that I'm seeing in Asia, well, not just in Asia now, it's spreading, where you have students of a teacher, whoever, especially if it's a famous one, celebrity, immediately equating that somehow to a high level of noble status, meaning at the very least, either an agami or an arahant. It behooves upon the teacher who hears about this, even offhand, if they have not attained it, or even if they have, to pull the student aside and not scold them necessarily, but to talk to them, to caution them not to misrepresent the Dhamma. Because the student is, if they're coming from a genuine place of how they see to be the truth, but it is not true. The teacher knows this. They need to go and tell the student, don't do that because I am not an arahant. There's no shame in doing that. In fact, it is mandatory for him or her to do that. But we're seeing the opposite. They're seeing the error, in fact, the mistake, the adhamma that is being promulgated, and they're keeping quiet. Why? There's more support coming. I was in Malaysia and I saw people who would look at the status of the monk how many vasas, etc. In their mind, they were thinking, okay, so if I give an offering to him versus him, the merits will be more. This is one sad phenomenon. The other phenomenon is thinking that, oh, I hear that he is over there, an arahant. Oh, why am I going to bother with these guys? I'll go and give him. This is something that we're seeing. It's sad. It's not supposed to happen, but it is. So this is the convoluted way of manipulating the noble discipleship. And then the beauty of it, of how noble it is. We're trivializing it. And the bhikkhus have a lot to do with this. The bhikkhus, if they use their head, their conscience, their wise moral shame, they will put an end to this. And some of the bhikkhus are the promoters of this. It's terrible. There's no hearing, there's definitely no uttappa in such characters. Because the arahants, there's a saying that my parents used to say, looking for something in broad daylight, outside, with a flashlight that works, and still not finding the thing. I'm transliterating from Armenian, but basically, an arahant would be that hard to find, because they're hiding. For good reason. They're never going to have a patch on the shoulder that says arahant. No. But that's what we have today. But let's be different. So I hope that works for you.
Thank you. That's very much.
So Bhante, how do people then know that, okay, there's so many arahants, like as you mentioned, if arahants are not kind of announcing themselves or acknowledging, or how is it known?
Remember that bit I mentioned about devas? Devas give us so much encouragement in different ways. They do exist, by the way. In case you couldn't tell from all this talk I mentioned, they do exist, and they do allow us to know things that are hidden, oftentimes. And this is not a special thing that happens with this person or that person only. It happens with everyone who is practicing, especially if you have sila. Sila that is not changeable according to the situation. No, sila that is pure. You're virtuous. You have a virtuous behavior. You're virtuous actions, thoughts, speech, and body. It's very attractive to the devas. There are many, many devas, many more than you can imagine, more than the number of human beings who have tasted the Dhamma, who were present at Lord Buddha's time, who listened to the Dhamma Talk straight away. They were there. But because of their long lifespan, they still, survive. Human beings come and go. 2,000 years is nothing for them. 1 million years is nothing to them. So when we talk, when we discuss the Dhamma, when we ask questions like this, it's beautiful. It attracts devas. And then all you have to do is, you just have to ask your heart. Are there devas? Are there arahants in the world? And drop the question. Just don't dwell on it. Don't analyze it. Don't try to figure out anything. And then it's just like falling in love. You will know. Not intellectually. You will know for sure. And if someone comes and tries to deny that, even give you money, $1 million, says, change your mind. Stop talking nonsense. Here's $1 million. Okay? Could you change your story, please? You say, even if I want to, I can't. Because you know something. And somebody like coming over and saying, gravity doesn't exist on this planet. It would be as ridiculous to you. Because you know it for yourself, for sure. Pacchatang veditabbo vinyuhi. It's to be realized, tasted, known for oneself, by oneself. But in the case of the devas, it's not you completely, but you know. Your heart knows. Again, it has a lot to do with the purity. Now, when you're practicing yourself, you will come to know as well. that's one way of trying to answer that difficult question you asked. It corners the person. Sure.
First-hand or second-hand stories about rebirth or devas to inspire our practice, if convenient to.
Well, we are here. See, we don't have to mystify. I know there's a part of our brain, our culture, as human beings, we like to see the supernatural. We like to see things that are unnatural. Somebody walking on water. Ooh. Somebody walking on air. Somebody walking through the walls. These, by the way, are mundane abilities. If you go into the fourth jhana and you really go deep into the fourth jhana, there are ways where you can experience those things. But it takes a lot of concentration. There have been people who have done that. Buddhist teachers who have done that. Dipama was an example. She and her sister from India, she's passed on now, but she used to do things that were mind-boggling. And people had seen her and her sister one time. They were up in the air by the trees, walking on air and behaving as if they're in the kitchen. Just to give you an example. But that lasted very short. Eventually, it's like, okay, so what? It's like the ability to speak a language that most people cannot. Sign language, for me, it's so mystifying to look at someone without voice, using hand gestures, and expressing so much. I don't have that ability, but it is an ability. It needs concentration. But as far as something like a tangible or something like not evidence, but a personal experience, I think all of us have. It has to do with karma, action. Rebirth is the same thing. We are being reborn every single day, many, many, many times per day. Every time you breathe, you're dying. And you're being born again. Try not to breathe next time you exhale. See what happens. You have to go, take that. You have to breathe. It's the same thing. I see it as the same thing. It's just much more condensed with the breath. A life is a long time, 60 years, 70 years, 130 years, let's say. But it is very short. I mean, if you condense it, it's the same as your breathing. How can I say that? It's your memory. You don't remember your past life. It's happening though. But your practice will allow you to see it. Now, there are people who, I have a friend, she's in Indonesia. She's also a meditator. She helps individuals. She's a hypnotist. The term, I think, is past life regression. So she became really big in Indonesia because she does this, and she does a very good job. Many, many, many people go to her and have been going to her, and she helps them to allow the mind to rest. These are not usually meditators. To give them a taste of the past, but to be able to pull them out of it without being shocked. This is good for someone who is interested but does not have that equanimity yet. So if you like, you can go and visit such an individual just to get a glimpse of, how it is. But there's also, there was, which doctor was that? He was a psychiatrist, who had so many patients coming in reporting past life experiences that he changed his whole focus from the US. I forgot his name. Not Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson was also very notable in his research. But anyhow, it'll come back to me later.
Was it
Tucker?
Yeah.
Brian Weiss. Thank you, Joe. His name is Brian Weiss, yes. A very good, he's written several books I love Zoom because you have so many individuals thinking. It's like Brian Weiss. He also you can also find audiobook of his, and people have created these snippets of instructions from his lectures, techniques where you can apply. But it has to do with you relaxing yourself so much. You can do it yourself, and you can follow his voice. Nothing to be afraid of. Brian Weiss, W-E-I, right? Yeah, double S. Brian, B-R-I-A-N. Past Masters or Perfect Masters, something like that. That's one of the books. Anyhow, you would be able to walk yourself, as it were, to earlier. So you start from now, and you go back to the time we had lunch. So it's a much shorter increment of time. And then you go extend it, let's say, to the morning. How was it, let's say, when you were here at 9 or 9:30 a.m.? And then you go a little bit earlier, when you woke up. And then you can push it a little bit until you go even to the beginning of your life, here, in this life. So people can't even see their own childbirth, being born. And so, but you need to be relaxing yourself appropriately. So rushing is never a good thing. So slowly, you go back, and then the next time, so you come back. You do it, you go back, and it's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. That's you can think of it like that. So you're moving, so you're allowing yourself the tolerance. And you're becoming more acclimated to quieting down the mind, despite what you might see. And then you can even push it beyond this life. Let's say the last moments of my last life, previous life. And then you come back. And then you do this again and again and again. And you can play this game with yourself. But you have to be in a safe place. Close the door. You can even have some music if you like, if you're a lay person. And so that's a good resource, because no matter what I say, it's really not going to be that beneficial, like even if it's a personal experience. I think the experiences that we have through the suttas of the teachers are far more interesting than mine, and much more inspiring than what I may have to share. But what is even more important, I think, is your own experience once you have it. So I encourage you to do that. And not be shocked. You might look down and you see, instead of your feet, you might see, I don't know, the feet of a bird. Now, if you're holding on to, no, I'm a human being, I have my toes, I just did pedicure yesterday. Yeah, I'm expecting to see those toes, and they're not there. Now I'm seeing cows' hooves. What is that? That doesn't work. So you have to have an open mind and allow, non-judging, not even expecting to see a certain thing. That's another thing. So I hope that's helping I know there's a lot of curiosity attached to it, but if there's any thoughts, questions?
We have one other question, if that's okay.
Sure.
With reference to tireless effort as a quality, is it meant to refer to the vigor, i.e. to work harder, intensity or persistence, or is it referring to the 4 right efforts, or perhaps both, tireless right effort?
Any effort that is not following the formula of samma vayama is wrong effort. Because it means it is off balance. Because there is a lot of wisdom. Remember, I don't know if it was here, but I was mentioning, I think it was. The first time I was here, I think someone was asking about samadhi. Anyhow, every single one of the steps of the Noble Eightfold Path must have within it wisdom in the form of right view. So when we get to effort, if you don't have right view, it will be wrong efforting. ing. Wrong. And that's when you have this happen, when the person is meditating and you see these lines. Effort on its own, applied with intensity even, on its own, is wrong effort. It needs to be balanced. It needs to be soft when it needs to be soft. You need to balance it. That's why we have the 7 factors of awakening. If we have the energizing group, right? Vidya, Dhamma Vichaya, Piti, even joy. And then we have the calming group, which is Passaddhi, tranquility of mind, Samadhi, collectedness of mind, and Upekkha, equanimity. And in the middle, we have Sati, balancing the whole thing. So Lord Buddha said, if you balance these 7, you have Nibbana occur. So it's a balance. So it's a combination of all that. Vigor is part of persevering effort. In fact, Vidya I translate usually as persevering effort. When you're sitting and you feel like you need to get up for some reason, and there's no reason, physical reason, like I have to go to the bathroom, otherwise I'm going to pee in my seat. No, there isn't that. But you feel compelled enough to get up. Or sometimes you really have something. Let's say you hear the scream outside or something happens. So suddenly you want to become a good Samaritan or something. Even though there's a million people outside, you're like, no, I have to go. Why? So it requires some tremendous effort from you to sit, stay put. So it's a balance. So right effort has 4 aspects. Remember, the first 2 aspects have to do with the unwholesome, and the other 2 have to do with the wholesome. So we restrain, we eliminate, we avoid the unwholesome. Close the door. I give the example of, imagine your house. Suddenly, well, you left the door open and there's rats inside the house now. Rats. What do? First thing first, what do? Well, that's not that easy. First, what do I have to do? I had left the door open. Close the door first. Otherwise, more will come. Close the door. Next, clean it up. Eliminate. That's the second. Eliminate the possibility for them to stay in the house and create nastiness. Pick them up, put them in the bag, get them out of the house. And clean the house, that would be the second portion of the right effort. So you develop wholesome qualities. That's why I say soften and open. Open when you're meditating. Open. Be forgiving of yourself. Okay? I give you permission to be nice to you. You being nice to you. Could you do that? Could you smile? Can you say, it's okay? Really? That's already developing the wholesome. That's the third part of right effort. And then there's the final one, maintaining that. The cleanliness of the house. So no more rats could come in. Making sure the windows are open or have a screen, nothing can creep through. That's all part of right effort. So it must be balanced with wisdom. So it's all of those things, Vidya.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, that's all questions.
Okay.
Is there some time, Bhante?
Is there time? Well, the question came up, so go ahead, ask.
Because you just mentioned about the pity.
Piti.
Yes. Could I ask Bhante to probably explain a bit more about it?
Piti is spiritual joy, sometimes mistakenly translated as rapture, which comes from a Western Christian interpretation. That's not the same. It's not a trance that you get into. It's like, oh yeah. No. You have everything to do with it. You've accommodated, you've allowed the space for piti to happen. It is the highest form of joy that you could experience in this body, in this brain, with this mind. The highest. But it's a temporary state. What piti does is it prepares the ground for upekkha, but it does so in a nice flowing motion, in a nice flowing way. What I mean by that is immediately right after piti, what you have is tranquility coming in. This is different than any other kind of joy that you've had. Let's say you go to the, I don't know, you win the lottery, you win $10 million. Your heart just jumping, hey, we're so happy. That is not piti. Because there's no tranquility after that. There might be fear. Oh, they're coming to get me. People who I owe money to, something like that. But piti is not like that. So there is a sense of safety following it. This is an unusual, that's why we call it spiritual joy. This is part of the 7 factors of awakening. This is the highest kind of joy you could experience. But it has to be transcended. Remember the 4 jhānas? You cannot continue having joy and still be in the 3rd or even the 4th, especially the 4th jhāna. Now I said about tranquility. So joy and then tranquility, because it doesn't stay. Piti doesn't stay. It will turn into tranquility. The tranquility is acclimating you to get into upekkha, which prepares the ground. Upekkha is equanimity. Equanimity. So you're balanced. Something good happens, something bad happens, you're balanced. You see the rats running around, you're balanced. You're balanced. Something good happens, something bad happens, you're balanced. You're seeing them. You're even planning your next move, but you're balanced. You're not reacting, you're responding. From there, you have an entry point to Nibbana. Another example for piti would be when you are drowsy, when you are sleepy in meditation. I've found piti to be one of the best antidotes for sleepiness. Especially when you are determined to sit when everyone else is asleep. So you have all the reason in the world to sleep as well, but you say, no, I determined to sit. Sometimes it's very difficult after the 30 minutes are passed and you're like, your body, especially if it needs sleep, you go like this, and then I found piti whenever I would bring it up to mind, whoop, I give the example in the book of like lighting up like a Christmas tree, your spine. You just like, woof, you just sit, and you sit for long because your heart remembers the joy that it felt. So you're just bringing to mind piti from the past experiences. And your body remembers it. Suddenly there's a fusion, there's this flush in fact, of energy that didn't happen. It wasn't there. And suddenly you're able to sit. And that's the result of one of the benefits of piti as well.
Because this is one of the bojjhangas.
Oh yes, that's what I said, satta bojjhangas. This is key. Now too much joy will not get you into the balance. So even piti has to be in balance, in check. Otherwise you're going to be kicked out of the 3rd or the 4th jhanas. So you allow whatever is going to happen to happen.
And that flows into upekkha.
Yes, after it goes through tranquility and then samadhi, because samadhi must be there. Collectedness of mind. You're so alert, you're so aware. The whole world might be collapsing around you, but you're so fine. You're just like, you're not indifferent. You're not plastic. You're real, you're there. It's like, whoa. And then there's an opportunity to penetrate. You might be washing the dishes, and you suddenly will see the drops of water, or the flowing from the faucet of water. And you see the detergent cleaning up the oil. Suddenly you're seeing Dhamma. You're seeing the Paticca Samuppada. 12 links of causal relations. And then you feel the weight of the plate on your hand. And then you feel the body. Oh, you're doing Kalyanamittas suddenly, without even trying. And then you feel good, and it's like, oh, look at that. I'm feeling pleasant. Oh, you're doing Vedananupassana. You're doing not just body contemplation now, feeling contemplation. You're seeing the feeling. But you're not sleepy. You're not in a trance because you're holding the plate beautifully. You're alert. You're feeling the bottom of your feet. Fun stuff. Not bad. Oh, yes. Not just words anymore, though. That's when you see, oh, my life is the Dhamma. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. You look at a person as if, even though they're living with you, you look at them as if you're seeing them for the first time. How beautiful is that? You're never a matter of just a repetition of some patterns from your past anymore. Even the other people around you. The Arahants lived like that, you know. Good question. Well, my throat is given up. I don't think there's, okay, there's no questions here from this side. Tina? You have the floor. We can sit for 30 more minutes, or we could just, because I just don't have the ability to speak anymore. Would you be able to sit? I'll give you, okay, I see thumbs up. All right, so let's sit for a few more minutes. It's always good when you hear the Dhamma, especially when your heart is open. Miracles could happen.